Welcome along to Team Talk, the show that brings you the biggest sporting news, views and incredible stories from across Kent. Let's have a look at this evening's lineup. There's all the highlights, goals, results and reaction from the weekend's football, including an under-fire Tunbridge Angels boss, Steve McKim.
If the board feel it's the right decision for me to go, then that's up to them. But I can assure, there's only a handful of them, but I can assure them I'm not going nowhere unless I'm pushed.
Our A to Z of Kent Sports gets to 8-ball pool as Raynham's Jordan Church challenges me to some trick shots.
I was 9 years old and my parents had a pub in Lower Housetown. They had the 3 tons. So I used to play in there. I used to put beer towels down the pockets and steal all the free play.
And we've got your August Goal of the Month, giving you the chance to vote for your favourite strike, including a couple of corkers from the Stones. But first tonight, it was yet another jam-packed weekend full of frantic football with Kent sides in League and Cup action. Here's a look at some of the highlights, results and reaction. We'll begin in the Bostik South, where Hythe hosted Guernsey, with both sides sat on 3 points following the opening weeks of the season. Hythe just missed out on the playoffs last campaign and were in need of 3 points following a sluggish start to this term. The game was 25 minutes old when the home side grabbed the lead. Kenny Pogue got the better of on-rushing goalkeeper Callum Stanton before prodding home. The hosts had their second of the game 7 minutes before half-time. A long ball from Nick Shaw found the head of Pogue, and after an initial scramble in the box, Charlie Webster provided the necessary composure to beat Stanton at his near post for 2-0. Pogue grabbed his second of the game just after half-time before Guernsey pulled one back with 12 minutes to play. Thomas Dodd's deflected strike from 25 yards wrong-footed Shaw to grab the Islanders a consolation. And it was no more than that as a goal from Dean Grant and then a Jamie Dodd own goal added Gloucester the victory for Hythe in the final few minutes as they moved up to 14th in the table. Due to FA Cup commitments, there was only one other game in the South on Saturday. Sittingbourne continued their fine start to the new term with a 2-1 win over Whiteleaf. The informed Kane Rowland was once again amongst the scorers as they remain unbeaten and go second in the table. Into the Vanarama National League now, and Ebbsfleet once again drew as they failed to get the better of Eastleigh at home. Leaders Dagenham are the only other side unbeaten in the 5th tier, but Fleet are 15th following 7 draws in 8. Maidstone are now 19th after they lost at fellow strugglers Hartlepool, although there was better news for Dover, who won at Tranmere courtesy of a Ryan Bird penalty. They're now flying high in 6th, and Chris Kinnear was pleased they won, showing another side of their game.
Sometimes, we all want to attack and we want to be an attacking side, but today, you've got to get behind the ball and defend. Not every game you're going to play beautiful flowing football, whether you're Barcelona, Real Madrid or Man City or Man United. You just got to make the most, and as I say, I'm sure however we played really, the supporters who travelled were up in that far corner there. I think they were happy whatever happened.
In the South, Dartford bounced back from last Monday's defeat by bouncing back from 2 goals down against Hampton. Elliot Bradbrook notched twice as the Darts salvaged a point away from home. There was plenty of Kent sides in FA Cup first qualifying round action at the weekend. Herne Bay picked up a cracking result against previously unbeaten Walton Casuals. There was somewhat of a kit clash between Horsham and Ashford, and there was no doubt over who was the clear victor in the game. Margate progressed at the hands of East Grinstead, whilst Ramsgate will have to do it again after failing to dispatch Egham Town. Sevenoaks are out following a defeat to Crowborough, but Folkestone Invicta defeated Greenwich Borough. Tunbridge Wells took a replay away from Haywards Heath, but Tunbridge Angels were the surprise recipients of a cup shock to Ray Turner's Faversham side. And after an indifferent start to the season for the Angels, pressure is growing on boss Steve McKim.
Plenty of comments from our own supporters that aren't happy with me, maybe not the players, but listen, I've never walked away from anything. If the board feel it's the right decision for me to go, then that's up to them. But I can assure, there's only a handful of them, but I can assure them I'm not going nowhere unless I'm pushed, because I come here to do a job and I will strive and work hard to do that. Today, £3,000 a massive loss to the club.
And talking of managers under pressure, it was the same old story for Gillingham in League One on Saturday. Josh Parker's second half header was not enough to salvage a point against Shrewsbury, and yet another defeat leaves Adi Pennock's side in the bottom four, and the Gills chief now seriously starting to feel the heat. Plenty to ponder for the Gills before their next game then, but maybe it's psychologically where they're struggling. Have their players got the mental strength to turn things around? Are they already beaten before they go on the pitch? Or maybe they're not eating the right foods ahead of the game. Do players really know how crucial nutrition could be to their performance? Joining me on the sofa this evening to look in depth at these issues is Dr. Glen Davison, a lecturer in sports nutrition at the University of Kent, and Carla Meijen, a lecturer in sports psychology, also from the University of Kent. Guys, thank you very much for coming on this evening. Carla, we'll start with you. In terms of, say, the Gillingham players at the moment struggling for a bit of confidence, maybe when they go into their next game they won't be as confident as maybe they were at the start of the season because they've lost a couple of games. How do you, say, for sports people, do they get mentally prepared when they've had a setback to go again?
I think it's a good question. We probably have to go back to what sports psychologists really look about, how what we think influence what we feel and what we do. So obviously if you have a lot of negative thoughts in your mind that might influence how you feel, maybe you feel very anxious going out there, and that puts a lot of extra pressure, and then you might hold back when you actually go out to perform, and that obviously has a knock-on effect on your confidence. But another thing that could really influence how we perform as well is when we're thinking too far ahead of ourselves. So really when you think about optimal performance, it's about being in the here and now and actually focusing on the moment. But sometimes what happens is when we think about winning and losing, and that seems to be happening here, is, you know, there's a lot of maybe potentially thoughts about, oh well, if we lose again then, you know, we're in a negative momentum. That really takes that focus away from being in the here and now. And how you can get back from that is obviously, you know, mental skills training is not something that happens overnight. It's a longer process, and you can get better in it with training. But one of the things you can consider is what you say to yourself. So having phrases such as getting back into that moment can be quite helpful.
And Glenn, in terms of the nutrition side of things, what should these players be eating before they play a game or in the build-up to a game, would you say?
Another good question. Nutrition is obviously very important, and I don't think there's any single thing that you can really recommend, because the key thing that we have to remember with nutrition and with sports nutrition is that everybody is different, and there isn't really one size fits all. So you can't just with a blanket approach say you should eat this or you should eat like that. So usually what we say is think about the individual and think about what their requirements are. So, for example, a goalkeeper is going to have very different requirements to a central midfielder or a striker or something like that. So the thing to really think about is analysing what the demands are, how strenuous their particular position is, and then matching that up with their requirements and their nutrition. And I'm sure that's something that they do actually at this level. But generally speaking, they need to think about their nutrition not just on the day. That is very important, thinking about what they have in the hours before, immediately before, and even during any opportunities to consume things in breaks in play and half time. But also it's about the whole nutrition, what they have in the whole week or weeks building up, because that also influences how well they train, how well they adapt, and how much they improve. So it's about the whole nutrition on an individual level rather than a blanket approach.
And we're speaking about Gillingham in the sort of lower regions of English football. In terms of the top level of elite sport, this week we've got Roger Federer going for yet another Grand Slam title in the US Open. Psychologically, how do you think he's been able to stay mentally at the top lewer for so long?
I think when we're looking at Roger Federer, there are perhaps three things I'd like to focus on there. So the first one is motivation. So when you look at Roger Federer, he seems to be really enjoying what he's doing. He's going out there and, you know, he plays point by point and really sees the moment, and he wants to stay healthy and kind of enjoy it. So when we think about intrinsic motivation, that really helps with performance, linked to things like lower burnout levels and those types of things. So that's the first thing, like intrinsic motivation, but also self-belief, or in sports psychology we call this self-efficacy. And it's about your confidence in your ability to be successful. And this is something, when you look at Roger Federer, his previous performances really influence that. So, he's won 19 Grand Slam titles so far. So he has that kind of previous performance accomplishment that he can go back to and gain confidence from to be successful in future endeavours. But also, he sees Serena Williams, for example, being successful also in her 30s. So he has that kind of experience of seeing other people being successful at that level as an example. So self-confidence and kind of self-belief is kind of a second factor that could really kind of explain how he's been so successful. And also focus. So I talked about that a little bit earlier on when we talked about kind of Gillingham. But it's that idea that if you want to be successful, it's very important to focus point by point, especially when you look at tennis. So the moment he starts to be distracted, thinking about, okay, well, I want to go on for my 20th Grand Slam.
It's fascinating stuff. We'll touch upon this again in a minute, but time's just run out for us in the first half of Team Talk. More from these guys in a few moments' time. More chat from these guys, as I say, as well. A to Z of Kent Sports reaches E in a few moments. Find out what happened when pool star Jordan Church challenged me to some trick shots. And I'll be talking everything from a big few weeks for Kent's cricketers to the disastrous start to the season for Gillingham with Kent Messenger's Andrew Gidley on today's Best of the Back Pages. We'll be back in a tick with more chat between Glen and Carla. In the meantime, get your thinking caps on. Here's today's Team Talk teaser. See you in a moment. In light of Josh Wright's acrimonious departure from Gillingham during the last week, we're asking, in what year did the midfielder make his debut? We'll give you the answer after the break. Welcome back to the second half of Team Talk. Now, before the break, we asked you, in what year did Josh Wright make his debut for Gillingham? Well done to those of you that got it right. It was a bit of a trick question, with the answer being 2009, when the midfielder came on loan before he came back permanently in 2014. Goal of the month and your Best of the Back Page is still to come. But before that, we've reached E in our A to Z of Kent Sports. And as a result, we're focusing on 8-ball pool. Jordan Church is a world-class pool player and has a club based in Rainham. We went to meet him to find out more about his route to the top and to see if we could replicate some of his best trick shots. Breaking into the sport from an early age, Rainham's Jordan Church is a two-time World Youth Champion. Earlier this year, he also picked up the International Pool Association's World Doubles Championships. But how did he originally get into the sport?
I was 9 years old, and my parents had a pub in Lower Housetown. They had the 3 tons, so I used to play in there. I used to put beer towels down the pockets and steal all the free play. And we had a guy come in. He said I was pretty good, and he recommended that I trial for the Kent under-18s just to get some practice and some experience, really. And somehow got in at 9 years old, and never stopped playing since.
With more than 20 years of experience in the game, Jordan's learnt his fair share of trick shots. So did I have the steady hand and eagle eye to replicate some of his best.
Basically, I'm going to hit the yellow straight at the front. I'm going to put the yellow in the corner and the red in this one.
Although the symmetry of the pots wasn't quite as accurate, the result was the same. 1 out of 1 then, time to increase the difficulty.
So the plan is, come off 3 cushions. As it comes around here, it rolls the cue away.
Yeah.
Comes down, pots the black.
It sounded simple enough, but maybe not.
Rubbish. This time. Just trying to hit it a bit harder.
With a bit more power came a lot more success.
Beautiful.
Not a bad start then, but still some way to go before I can try my hand at this shot. Keelan Webster for KMTV. Glen and Carla still alongside me for the second half here on Team Talk. And Glen, I'll start with you in terms of the nutrition side of things. We saw Jordan there, he's a professional, but on a more, say, amateur level. For sports people, can it really help them if you're playing even sort of tennis, golf, football, cricket at sort of more of an amateur level? How much can nutrition play a part to give you that extra edge?
It can play a massive part, and I think the key thing to be aware of is that general nutrition, so if you have a really bad diet, that can have a really negative effect on your performance. So before we start to think about, does my diet look like the diet of a professional athlete, or am I taking the right supplements, etc., etc. We really should focus on getting our diet normal and healthy and balanced in the first instance, and that's where you can make the biggest gains. So for the more recreational athlete, before they start to worry about comparing their diet to a professional athlete who trains every single day, or maybe more than that, they need to just think about having good, healthy nutrition in line with the general healthy guidelines first of all. And by doing that, you can usually see massive improvements in performance.
And in terms of the psychological side of things, Carla, at that level, is it more about talent, or can you still get an edge psychologically?
Of course, you can get an edge psychologically, but you need both. I mean, without the skills, you won't be able to perform to the optimal level either. But to kind of give you one example of what someone might be able to do is if then planning. So you can already mentally prepare for things. So let's say you get very frustrated after you made a mistake, and you can tell yourself, if I get frustrated, what will I do to calm myself down? So you can already mentally prepare for those types of things beforehand by identifying those situations. If then I will do this, and have an action plan in place. And that will usually help people to kind of calm down and maybe refocus, which is one of the key skills that elite athletes are able to do, is focusing after mistakes and refocusing in particular.
And Glenn, before the break we were talking about elite athletes and the nutrition side of things, and Roger Federer. How big a role does nutrition play when it comes to that sort of thing?
A massive role. First and foremost, it's their fitness, their physical condition and their skill. But nutrition, if they get it wrong, then it can have a real negative effect on their performance. So nutrition for these guys who are at the very, very top level, and there's often tiny margins separating them, this can sometimes make that tiny margin, significantly better than their competitors. So it can give them that little edge, but there's lots of other things that are as important, if not more important, before that.
Well, guys, for the time being, fascinating stuff. We'll catch up with you again before the end of the show. But now it's time for your best of the back pages with a look at what's making the sports headlines across the county's newspapers. Earlier on, I was joined by Kent Messenger sports reporter Andrew Gidley.
And be looking for more wickets and runs from him in the next few weeks, because this is entering a fairly crucial spell for Kent. They start against Durham on Tuesday, and that's the first of 3 away games, Gloucestershire and Derbyshire to come. And it's looking a little bit edgy in terms of their promotion chances. I think they've dropped to 4th in the table now following that draw against Leicestershire, and they really need to, I think, win probably 3 out of their last 4 games to have a real chance, and they'll be hoping that the weather's on their side. A lot of talk about various players, with the likes of Adam Ball and Hugh Bernard moving on. I think there'll be a fair few changes come the end of the season, depending whether or not Kent get promotion. But with 2 being released already, it's probably the first 2 of maybe a few more. But it's a big week. Sussex, Nottinghamshire and Worcestershire are all vying for a promotion place as well. It looks as though Nottinghamshire are going to win the title, so an important time for Kent, and they'll be looking for a good result, and as I say, good weather up in the northeast.
Well, hopefully they can get a winning run start as they go for promotion. Gillingham certainly need to get on a winning run as well. Another disappointing weekend for them. Pressure surely now increasing on Adi Pennock.
Indeed. The hiring and firing season has already started. One of Adi Pennock's predecessors, Justin Edinburgh, got fired at Northampton last week, and chairmen, aren't the most patient of people these days. But Paul Scally made the appointment, has given Adi Pennock, Steve Lovell, and Jamie Day the chance, and I don't think he'll pull the trigger yet. But Gills fans will be disappointed. But I did hear Adi Pennock at the weekend, and he sounded gutted by the result. He said, his boys played well for 25 minutes, but the crucial point he made was that you've got to be ruthless in both boxes, scoring the goals and defending them. And I think that's been the Gills' Achilles heel so far this season, defending situations. I know they drew 3-3 against Southend and 1 in the week against them, but it's proving costly already. And 2 points from 5 games is not a good start.
And you say about being ruthless in both boxes. One Kent side that certainly was that at the weekend was Faversham. A great win for them against Tunbridge Angels in the FA Cup, and it was one of a number of Kent sides that goes through to the next round.
Yeah, I think that has to be probably one of the shocks of the round locally. Faversham have been a bit in or out at the start of the season, but they would be delighted to have got past Tunbridge, and they've been given a draw in the second qualifying round away to Wealdstone from National South. Now I know it's an away tie, but Wealdstone get very good crowds, and I think Faversham will be looking forward to their day out in North London. Certainly it'll be a good tie for Faversham, win or lose. And of course we're 3 rounds into the competition, and it's big money for these teams now. I think Saturday £3,000 went to the winners, and I think the next round is £4,500. So it's useful money for this type of club. And the other team, there's lots of good draws involving Kent sides, but I think the one involving Thamesmead will probably be the one that attracts most publicity, because they've been drawn at home to Billericay, who are the most talked about team in non-league football at the moment, with the exploits of their owner chairman Glen Tamplin. And Billericay coming to Thamesmead, that game of course being played at Dartford, probably on a Sunday, would I think generate a decent gate as well.
Kent Messenger sports journalist Andrew Gidley there, sharing his thoughts on today's FA Cup draw. And sticking with football, it's time now for our first goal of the month for this season. Plenty of goals across the county during August. We've whittled it down to just 4 strikes, and you can vote for your favourite on our Twitter page at @KM_Team Talk. Here they are. And you can vote for your favourite on our Twitter page at @KM_Team Talk a little bit later on this evening. Just before we go, Glen, Carla, an opportunity for people to get a free online course at the University of Kent. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So we're running a free online course, particularly focused on the science of endurance performance, that looks at all different components of sports science that people can sign up for on Future Learn. They can look on our website for the link, and they can learn all about psychology, nutrition, physiology, fatigue, and so on.
Well, guys, it's been fascinating stuff having you on the programme this evening. Thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again in the future.
My pleasure, thank you.
That's just about it from us for this evening. If you missed any of today's programme, though, you can watch it again throughout the week by visiting kmtv.co.uk. We'll be back again next Monday with the very best news, views and incredible sports stories from across Kent. But for now, good night.